Welcome to the Australian Business Show. Today's guest is a force of nature in early childhood education, entrepreneurship and leadership. Sylvia Arotin is the founder of My Montessori School in Sydney and the global platform Guide and Grow, connecting hundreds of thousands of parents and educators worldwide. She's an award-winning educator, entrepreneur and now a published author in the new book, Dreams and Determination. A deeply personal story of how she turned life's toughest challenges into a mission to create lasting change for future generations. From building a business from the ground up to redefining how we communicate with children, Sylvia's work bridges classrooms, homes and communities around the globe. Today, we're going to dive into the lessons behind the book, the vision driving her mission to reach 1 million children, and the truths she's learned that can transform not only how we raise children, but how we chase our own dreams. Sylvia, welcome to the Australian Business Show. It's so good to have you. It's been a long time coming.
Yes, absolutely. I'm so glad to be here, finally.
Finally. Joining us down in Melbourne, in cold Melbourne, although it was gorgeous the last few days, and then all of a sudden it's gone back to winter. You've been in Geelong?
Yes, I was in Geelong. And I was there for we ran a youth leadership summit alongside the Mumpreneur Business Conference and Awards. Yeah, it was a great event to be a part of, and the kids really took a lot out of it. So yeah, I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, nice. So let's go. Obviously, the Australian Business Show is about business, not just in Australia, but it's for Australian entrepreneurs that are really aspiring to, I guess, entrepreneurs used to be the outcasts of the world, probably before our time, being as young as we are. But being an entrepreneur is like one of the latest things. Everybody you speak to is an entrepreneur, but to achieve success takes a lot, right? It takes a lot of sacrifice. It's like one of the things I've learned is you have to make a decision. What are you prepared to sacrifice to achieve the things that you want to achieve? And it's not for everybody, and that's okay too. So I kind of want to go back and for the listeners and talk a little bit about your origin story, if you like, a little bit about that. Were you always going to be an entrepreneur? Was that something you always wanted to do? Talk a little bit about we were just talking before we started here about some of the health challenges that you had to also learn to overcome, which again is a trait of that entrepreneur. I mean, you're a powerhouse, and I'm looking at some of the research I did before here with the awards that you've been winning. You've written a book, you've launched a number of businesses. You're still, is it Montessori School? You're still founder and director, CEO as well. So, over to you. I mean, tell us, how did that journey start for you?
At school, I probably never really knew what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to go into graphic design and animation for Disney because that was a passion of mine. And then, being from the background I am, of an Armenian background and being WOG, your parents are like, no, you're either going to be a CEO, a lawyer, a doctor. There's no option. You're going to uni. And I ended up doing an international communications degree, which actually came into play later on. So I was glad I did that. But I was in the hospitality and fitness industry, so very vastly different from education. And I actually had a major car accident in 2010, and that kind of was a pivotal moment of mine to really rethink what it was that I wanted to do with my life, because I wasn't really physically able to continue in those jobs that I was doing. And so a friend's mum was visiting from Vienna, and she was a Montessori teacher. And a lot of my friends and family were like, oh, well, you're really good at, communicating with people. You like people. Mind you, I hated kids growing up. And now it's like my sole purpose in this life are children. So that's a really funny kind of juxtaposition. But so I then read up about Maria Montessori, and she was a powerhouse of a woman. Like, you're talking Italy's first female doctor. She wasn't allowed to practice medicine because she was a woman. It was the time of the war, so she was advocating for women's rights, and and then she was observing young children and how they grew and developed, and had developed this curriculum to help them learn. And that then became this international system. So I was drawn to her, and I thought, this is amazing. I want to know more, want to learn more. So
how did you come across her?
So my friend's mum, she was a Montessori teacher in Vienna. So she
Yeah.
obviously spoke to me about the system.
Okay.
And then I was like, okay, what is Montessori? Like everyone.
Yeah.
And it's basically just a system that allows children to be independent. It sees them as capable and confident. We follow the child's lead. So we see where their strengths are. We understand that they really need those basic life skills that are really not being taught in today's system. And then it kind of became this parenting way where people value children as contributing members of their family. It's not this authoritarian, like, I'm the parent and you do as you're told. It's more of a collaborative approach that has respectful boundaries, that allows children to be the best versions of themselves. So we really just support and facilitate that with a curriculum that's obviously based on science. So I think it's an incredible system, but that's how I got into Montessori. And then a couple of years as I was working and learning about it, I thought, I really want to start my own school. Being the daughter of an entrepreneur, I think it's in our blood when we see, our father or parents, running businesses, and from a young age we're involved, we're doing rosters, we're, doing uni and running the shop at the same time. So I think a little bit of that background gave me a really solid foundation, even though, as we were talking before, my parents were not around at that time. So they had separated, and one was living in LA, one was living in Dubai while I was in Sydney. So then after after I decided I wanted to open my own school, I went to New York. So one of the families I was teaching asked me to come to New York and teach their kids while we were on holidays, school holidays. I thought, great, young 20-something-year-old, paid trip to New York, let's go. And when I got back, I'd put my resignation in. I wanted to start my school. And then when I got back to Sydney, that's when everything changed. So I was incredibly ill. Of course, me being young, as all young people, we're like, oh, it's nothing, it's a virus, I'll get over it. But unfortunately, my condition was really bad and I was admitted into hospital for 3 weeks. And at that point, I had lost all basic functions. So
was this POTS?
Yeah, so they went through all the specialists and finally diagnosed me with POTS, which is called postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. Bit of a mouthful.
That's why I said POTS, and I'll let you tell us what it is.
So basically, to simplify it for everyone listening, it's where the communication from the brain to your vagus nerve, which is the main nerve, it's your central nervous system that controls all your basic functions, malfunctions, and it switches off. So your body does not recognize when you're sitting or standing from a lying position, and it's not able to then pump the blood to your heart and your head. And so easily you just pass out because your body doesn't know what else to do. It just shuts down. And then it comes along with a lot of other things like constant dizziness, nausea, high heart rate. So you feel like you're constantly running a marathon. I wasn't able to toilet independently. I wasn't able to walk. So, coming from a fitness background, really fit, healthy, young woman, I found myself just not being able to be independent anymore. So
is this acquired or as a result of your car accident, or is it a genetic thing?
So it's a really good question. There's not a lot of research that has gone into POTS, and because of what we know that either viral infections can trigger it, trauma, women going through pregnancy, surgeries, or even something like I feel like my car accident held almost that trauma in my body. So my body was weak and I never really worked through that. So then when I did have a kind of like glandular fever in New York, and I feel like that after that viral infection, that's when the POTS developed. And now we're seeing a lot of people that went through COVID. When they say long COVID, they're throwing a lot of those people under the POTS umbrella. So I feel like there's not enough research that's been done on people with POTS. It is not as rare as we think it is.
I was going to say, what are the incidence rates? Do you know?
I don't know, but what I do know is that across the globe, about 1 in 4 people have POTS or dysautonomia, which is the umbrella which POTS sits under. So it's not actually as rare as we think it is. When I started researching about my condition and trying to understand how I could help myself, because the medical world would just kind of put you in a box and send you home with 10 pills and, you're not really going to walk again. You're not going to this again. And it's just ridiculous. You've really got to be your best advocate for yourself. So I started joining Facebook groups and, researching, and I was like, wow, this is really not as uncommon as I thought it was. So, yeah.
How do they diagnose it?
So there's something called a tilt table test. So they basically strap you to a bed lying down, and then they'll raise the bed and be measuring your blood pressure and heart rate as they raise the bed. Now, any normal functioning person will be in an upright position and nothing much happens. For me, what happens was that as they were raising the bed, my blood pressure would drop and my heart rate would go up to 180, 200, and I would black out within 30 seconds or a minute because my body just couldn't be in that position. So a lot of POTS patients actually go undiagnosed for a long period of time.
I can imagine.
So my condition was so severe that I was lucky enough to get a diagnosis, whereas many patients that have POTS go misdiagnosed, or they get diagnosed with anxiety or panic attacks or things that are associated or have similar symptoms to POTS, but it's actually not the neurological dysfunction. So it's actually a really complex disease.
So it sounds like it manifests physically, but also mentally?
So what happens is when you have POTS and you're passing out left, right and centre, I then obviously developed anxiety alongside that because I didn't want to leave my comfort zone or my house because I was going to pass out. And it's very difficult to accept when you are not in control of your physical body.
Yep.
So then what happens is you're having incidents, whether it's in the car, whether it's in public, and then you are trying to decipher what is POTS, what is my anxiety? Okay, how can I then have coping mechanisms and skills to deal with my anxiety so that so it sets each other off. So that's something that I really had to understand and learn, to separate my physical condition and then understand what was my mental condition. Because, like I said, it is a really difficult thing when you lose all function.
So, I mean, I'm thinking about this because everybody's, I'm not trying to downplay yours, but everybody's got a story. That like life is tough and there's things that happen to us and we've got to overcome that. Or at least that's the opportunity, is to overcome that. And if I tie that into business, for me, that's one of the biggest keys in business, is that business is really, really hard. Even today, there's things that have gone on, in my personal life that I mentioned to you briefly off air before. And it's like, nothing ever just goes the way you necessarily plan it, but how do you adapt and how do you overcome? So do you think that experience sets you up for life in business and dealing with the daily problems that happen in business?
Yeah, so funny story. The family that I was traveling with in New York City, he is a business coach and has an amazing platform and whatnot. He walked into my hospital room with a whole array of logos for my business and was like, Sylvia, let's get your logo started. I was like, yes, I need to start designing my logo and understand how I'm going to build my school. Even though I had no physical capability of functioning, I was still determined. And this is where that resilience and determination comes in from. Regardless of what was happening around me, I still had the dream, I was still determined, and I was going to set up my school. So what happened was, I started designing the logo and finding out how I could build the school around my circumstances. So, okay, fine, I'm not physically able to get up and go somewhere to work. Fine, I'm going to bring work to me. So I found a home that I could transform into a school and that I could live in one section and run the school out the back and have the support of staff as well from day dot, so that we were able to run programs. So when you talk about the skill set, or what kind of mental state do you have to be in for business, I feel like regardless of what's going on around you, it's really important to make it work for your circumstances and what it is that you want to achieve. There's no excuses. Nobody was going to sit there and start my business for me. And I was in that position where I had to do it because I didn't have any other source of income. I didn't have any other support. If I didn't do that, then, how are you going to put food on the table? So it was almost like that drive to overcome. So it was going on that health and personal journey alongside my business journey, which I think is so awesome, because when you look back at those adversities or those hardships, you realize that they rebuild you a lot stronger and a lot more resilient, and you develop the skills that you need to overcome anything that your business is going to go through. So
I think my father-in-law, he's known for having his little sayings, but one of them was, life breaks us all, but some of us are made stronger in the broken places. And that's exactly what you're talking about. And that's why I say, I said it earlier, and I hear a lot of these gurus and things talk about, I did it so anybody can do it. No, I disagree. It takes something more than just a desire. It takes grit. It takes resilience. It takes being able to get knocked down and get back up again multiple times. And not everybody can or is prepared to do that for various reasons. Not to cast judgment, but I think, again, if you want to get into business, be prepared you're stepping into the ring, right?
Yep.
And one of my mentors has written an incredible book called Business is War, and it truly is. It's not you get bloodied.
Yep, you're in the trenches.
You're in the trenches, right?
Yeah.
So you've got a pretty bold, audacious goal. Is it 1 million children globally that you want to be able to impact?
Yeah.
Through your process, your system, your business?
Yeah, so that's one of them. And the other one is to end the verbal abuse of children globally, because as of last year, UNICEF put out a paper which the statistics are that 60% of children aged 2 to 8 years old are experiencing verbal aggression in the home, and 1 in 3 students are reporting verbal abuse in schools.
So you said verbal abuse,
Yep.
but can you define what that is?
So, it sounds a lot worse, when we say verbal abuse, but basically what we're talking about is the shaming, the putting down, the screaming, the yelling, you're not good enough, why aren't you listening to me? And I told you, and it's almost like the yelling and the screaming that goes on, but the putting down and the blaming children, because what's happening is psychologically we're not preparing them, we're not even supporting them or giving them the right kind of communication skills. And we know that the impact on their mental health is the same as when they're physically abused. So the thing is that we know that the science and the research shows us that the way we communicate with children and the way we speak to them becomes their inner voice. So if we are not setting children up confidently and to, communicate positively with them and build those relationships and connections from a young age, we know that that's going to have a significant impact when they're adolescents. And this is where we're seeing a lot of issues come up.
In mental health especially?
Correct.
Yeah.
And in the schooling system.
Well, the schooling system's broken.
We know that.
Right? And exactly. And so I'm interested to talk a little bit about where you think and where you believe that's headed, especially in a world of, we try to fit everybody into a square hole in with our system, our schooling system. It's terrible. Now, I went to a couple of different schools. Believe it or not, I did go to a Rudolf Steiner school for a year and a half. Really interesting experience.
Very interesting.
Yes. And then public schools. And did I go to other private schools? No, I think that was pretty well it. The rest was sort of public schools. But, we were just saying before, I had ability, but I was not interested. But where I did really well was when the teacher found a way to engage and relate with me where I was at, rather than trying to hammer me into a square hole, because I wasn't automatically academic. I had to be interested. So what does that mean for schooling and for young people now? Because it's a factory, right? We're indoctrinated into what education is and where it's going and what you need to do to go to school, get an education. Well, that wasn't me, and it wasn't a lot of super successful people I know. Yeah. So something's broken about that system. And I also wonder, as an extension to that, what role is AI going to play in that?
Yeah.
Is there a way where kids are assessed through AI, and the teaching that's done through AI, through robotics or through online, whatever it is, even look at the Apple Vision stuff, do kids even have to go to a physical school anymore, but are teachers virtualized and catering to exactly where that individual's at and how they learn?
Yeah. There's a multitude of kind of questions and topics in that. And I want to go back to the original one about our education system. And the one thing that you said about the fact that the teacher that you resonated with the most was the one that related to you. This is what I love about the Montessori system, because it's a very individualized approach, but we meet the children where they're at. And we know that our education system was built to basically churn out, right? Churn in, churn out. You're teaching to the middle. If you're struggling, good luck to you. If you're advanced, fantastic. But we're just going to teach, and whoever takes in what they take in, fantastic. That's great. And what we know is that children need a lot more than just that. If they are going to be successful, I mean, when you look at some of the main tech giants, Sergey Brin, Microsoft, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, they've all either started, they all went to Montessori, they all started in Montessori, or they have Montessori schools. Even Elon Musk is setting up a new school, and it's a Montessori inspired school. So he's big in AI and bringing all that as a hybrid model. But obviously these people have seen the value or understand that our traditional and mainstream education system is broken. And the fundamental skill set that we need to be teaching children is to make them feel confident, to connect with them. The relationship that children have with people and human beings will never, ever compete with AI. No matter how good AI gets, I feel like we definitely can use it in education. So whether it's cutting down on timing on preparing and planning or assessment, training it to do those particular tasks. But you always have to have that human element or that teacher that's going to be in there to connect with the children, to oversee it, to tweak it, because that is the evolution of human beings. Like, regardless of how good AI gets, I do feel like children thrive when there's that genuine, intentional, sincere connection with someone, and you see that transformation. The screen or the robot it will never have that essence of a human being.
It won't. I agree with you, and you are far more educated in this space than I am. I wonder though, like I watch how kids play online games in virtual rooms, and they relate very much to what's going on in there. There has to be. I mean, what happens if we have this virtual teacher? They've got glasses on. I don't know whether it's Apple Vision, whatever, a product like that. There's a physical image of somebody there that can read body language, that understands sentiment, and not just words. I wonder. I just wonder where that goes, and because how does Montessori here enter this? I guess how does Montessori then meet the child where they're at? Because I also understand a little bit about, especially teachers in the public system, they've got a class of 30 kids in a class? And you've got, especially in high school, what have you got? 30 minutes, 45 minutes. Yeah. What do you do? A minute with each one? That's not possible. So no wonder they've had to adopt that.
Of course.
So how do you then create the time to then meet the individual where they're at?
Yeah, so the great thing with that system is that they actually group children into age brackets. So for example, your adolescents are, you've got your 12 to 15-year-olds, your 15 to 18-year-olds. And what they're doing is they're preparing children to be leaders. So the older ones are then collaborating with the younger ones. The younger ones are learning off the older ones. And of course, within the system, you've got a lot of things within the environment that are supporting the child. So the problem with mainstream system is everyone's looking at me. I'm the teacher. I'm telling you what to do. Whereas when you give children the skill set on how to problem solve, how to critically think, giving them the right tools and materials, they're almost going to be their own self-learner because they've adopted and learnt all of the skills that they need to. And those are the skills that we see that are actually lacking in adults. No motivation, tell me what to do, feed me with a spoon because I don't know, 1, 2, 3. But when you actually are working on children's skill set and you're giving them that critical thinking and problem solving and leadership skills, they're actually going to then collaborate and become more of a team environment where they can then learn with each other. So I feel like that's how it works in a system like that. It's not that one to many, it's a more of a collaborative approach, and they do a lot of project-based work as well in high school.
I love the leadership piece in that. I think that's such a skill for people to learn, and what better time to learn it than as you're growing up. I mean, I met with a guy just in the last few days who's a very successful developer, and even though he made a lot of money, he said, I went through a really tough time because I went through that stage of the flash cars and the houses and all that sort of stuff, but I still it didn't fill that hole. And then he figured out that when he was doing for other people, which is just another form of leadership too, right, is when he actually felt really fulfilled.
Yeah.
And it changed his world forever. So I just thought that was really interesting, and what a gift to give to young people, to be able to teach them leadership, but leadership is about giving.
Absolutely. And I think also it's about that respect for others and themselves, and grace and courtesy, like all of the things that, understanding what it means to have goals or set, have that vision. You just mentioned something that really resonated with me about finding your purpose and connecting that with your business. Because the thing that I find is everyone goes, oh, Sylvia, you do so much, and you've got a global platform. We've got almost 500,000, parents and families across the globe. Like, what motivates you, or what drives you to do that? And the biggest thing is that my business always started by serving others and helping others. So our whole model was built off what they call now as a social enterprise. I love that word. But it's really finding your purpose and your passion. And really my purpose is to make a change in the world in a way that's also going to be sustainable, but that's going to impact families globally. And when you are leading with intention and with purpose, that's when I feel like you can really succeed and you feel fulfilled in what you do.
Yeah. And I can speak from my own experience that absolutely, we all start out, I guess, chasing the mighty dollar in one way or another.
Yeah.
But when you actually figure out that there's, be it social enterprise, but just giving back in some way, whether that's sharing information, sharing time, does carry a lot of. It's funny. It's actually. We say it's selfless, but it's actually not. It's not selfish, but it's really self-serving because you get as much from that.
It fuels you. It literally drives me, every day when I get up. It's like, it's just this energy, this caffeine hit that you get because you just know that you're impacting so many, when you see the difference that it makes in children's lives, and when you have families that are, coming to you and saying, oh, so, you don't understand the impact that this has had, and we're so glad that we found you, or whatever it is, like those small things, you realize the reason why you're doing it. And it's not just to make me feel better about myself, it's to drive me to make a greater change. It's like, okay, well, I'm reaching these people in this community. How can I impact it on a wider level, on a bigger level? Because yes, our education system is broken. Yes, parents do not have a village anymore to help raise their children. How can we recreate that so that we are supporting parents and families? They are our future generation. Maria Montessori came up with this, or she had this amazing quote, and she said, within the child lies the fate of our future. Like, they are, if we do not invest in our children, then that's going to have a direct impact on our future.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, whether we're here to see it or not, it's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
I find myself really fearful of where, we're trying to recruit people constantly at the moment, and young people get a bad rap, and it's not all of them, but there's a cohort that don't want to work or don't understand that everyone's work-life balance. It's like, you don't get it. That's not. You're actually looking for the wrong thing.
Yeah.
It's not about work-life balance. It's about finding something you love doing. It's about understanding that you've got to work hard sometimes, and you don't love it 24/7.
Yeah.
There's days I don't love my day. Do you have those?
Yeah, I feel like when I don't really know how to say no very often, and so I think the days that everything gets piled on top of each other, and I don't know if I'm like sinking or swimming, those days I think to myself, oh my gosh, like why am I doing this to myself?
Yeah.
But yeah, I am really blessed in the sense that I wake up I do wake up. Yes, there is some days that are really physically hard because I forget that I have an underlying health condition, so I operate on this level of, what do you call it? Those A personality types where they're just like, constantly going. And then my body quickly will remind me and shut me down because it's like, you just need to slow down. So yeah, there are some days that are really, really hard, but it's all part of the journey, and you take the good with the bad.
And I think, just picking up on again, the vernacular there, the journey is something that I talk about too. It's not, you never get there. There's nowhere to get to, right? And so, because you get to a destination, then you're always looking for the next one, whatever that is in your life, whether it's a life goal, whether it's an experience, or whatever it is. So, I really like the wording there that it's about the journey. And if you've got to stop and smell the roses sometimes and go, okay, this is just a day in my journey, and tomorrow's going to be another day. God willing, but you only get today once, and so you've got to make the most of it as best you possibly can.
Absolutely.
I wanted to talk a little bit about some of what you have pioneered, or certainly you drive. You spoke about changing language. I think you've spoken a lot about changing default language, like good job or share. And can you just walk us through a little bit about how that came about and why?
Yeah, so I realized as I was working in the space with children that a lot of our language is very habitual. So you'll often hear parents say, good girl and good job, and it almost becomes this like automatic response, like regardless of what the child was doing. It's like, good job, good girl, good boy, oh great, good. And then you would almost see the child then looking to the parent for that acknowledgement. And I thought to myself, okay, and in Montessori, we really want to build children's intrinsic motivation. So that means coming from inside them, they feel proud of themselves. They feel like they did really well at something, not because they heard an adult telling them that they're good. Because what happens is and just as adults, if someone says to me, oh, Sylvia, you did such a great presentation, I would have been like, oh, well, I could have done this and I could have done that in your head, right? You're saying all those things. But if someone said to me, I love the way you used examples. Oh, it was really great that you showed this on the border. I really valued that. I would then take away and go, oh, great. Well, I'll use that next time and I'll do that. So it almost encourages me. And it's the same thing with children, because what happens is we don't want them to look to an external source or a person to feel good about themselves. So when we pass a judgment on them and we say, good job, they connect their self-worth to your judgment of them. And what they do then is they build their self-worth and their self-confidence on an external validation. So if I hear it from the adult that I did a good job, or I'm beautiful and I'm this, then my self-worth is tied to what someone else thinks of me, rather than building it from intrinsically, which is we say to children, you did it. You look so proud of yourself. Tell me how you felt about that. How do you feel about that? Or tell me about your painting, so that they then build this intrinsic motivation and drive that comes from within them, and they feel confident in themselves rather than looking to that external validation. Because we know when these kids then move into the social media world, it's all about how many likes do I have? Do I, and our self-worth, especially for women or for girls, is based on what other people think of us, because we do not have a strong sense of self-worth. So that whole praise and encouragement, yes, we want to encourage children. Yes, we want to praise them, but we do it in a way that is more effective in building their self-confidence, because we know how important that is, especially when children are going into the age of social media.
Yeah, I can see that. It's funny, isn't it? You know, we talk about educating children. We were all one once. Nobody ever teaches you how to be a parent. You know, you learn by default from your own parents or your own experience or lack thereof. And then you've got to kind of learn on the fly. And anybody, you don't need a license to go and have a kid these days.
Unfortunately not.
Yeah. Well, no, I would agree with you. It's like, because it's all well and good that someone goes, but I have a right to have a child. Perhaps you do, but you know what? The child has a right actually to have the right kind of upbringing.
Yeah.
And so it's not about you.
Yeah.
It's about them, and it's this thing of I have a right, which really irks me. You have no right. You know, there's an opportunity. It's a blessing, and unless you're going to bring quality people, raise quality people, contributors to society, you don't have a right at all.
Unfortunately, yeah, it's not like that in society, and a lot of people don't care about how they speak to their children or how they're raising their children, or, it's like, yeah, well, they don't know anything and they're just this and I know better and I'm the parent. But like you said, parenting doesn't come with a manual. Neither does teaching or communicating with children.
Oh.
So you would think that in a master's degree, I would have been taught how to talk to children or how to encourage them or how to help support behaviour. But none of that is in our training. From a certificate all the way through to a postgraduate degree, you would think that the universities would put in a module on communication and guiding behaviour. That is the number one thing when you work or deal with children, is how to actually talk to them or communicate with them, which is why I'm so passionate about that industry and making a change on a wider scale.
Yeah, it's a noble. Not only is it noble, but it's really needed out there. There's far too many. We did volunteered for a charity event in. Where was it? It was in Melbourne here anyway, but for a lot of people that are doing it tough, living rough, we volunteered. The business supported that. It's called All True Charity, but just sitting and talking to some of those people and what a day in their life looks like. But do you know what I noticed is that they were some of the most giving people.
Yeah,
I saw them go and find friends, colleagues, associates, whatever they were, to them and bring them and say, hey, you need this more than me. How can I help with this? And now these are people that are doing it tough, but their focus was on actually doing more in that community, which was really kind of special to observe.
I think from any community or any human interaction, we can always learn something if we're listening. And I think the biggest thing as an adult, even with children, is that we don't listen enough, and we always think that we know better or we're in a better position. But actually, if you set yourself aside for a moment, the child will show you what they need. The child will tell you what they need, but you need to be an observer that's coming from a place of, you know what, I'm just going to put my thoughts and my kind of, selfish wants or expectations aside for a second. And I'm going to really observe and listen to what it is that you're trying to communicate and tell me. Because a lot of the time their behavior is just them struggling. They don't know how to communicate what they need or what they want. Their brain isn't fully developed until they're 26 years old. So their prefrontal cortex, which helps with emotional regulation, understanding emotions, knowing how to process information and, reacting to it, until 26, like not even through their late teens or early 20s are they fully developed yet. So it is, these are things that we know scientifically. Why are we not helping to understand what children really need and meeting them where they're at? And it doesn't come naturally, though, to most people, right? And we're not equipped to help understand that if we're not open to knowing or learning about it.
It's self-perpetuating in a lot of ways, though, isn't it? Like if you come through that upbringing, then the sins of the father are visited upon the son, as the saying goes.
100%.
It's like, so, but also if your upbringing is of a certain values and certain way of communicating those, then often, not always, but often, that's how you will raise your children. And so we need to teach people how, and so that's what I'm picking up in what you're doing and where your passion is. Not the outcome is the impact on the child, but the effect has to be on the adults that are interacting with them.
Absolutely. It's about transforming the adult. Like we're changing children one child at a time, but it's really through the adults that we're doing that. So whether they're an educator, they're a parent, they're a caregiver, it's really about helping them on the journey, because like you were talking about, there's a lot of generational trauma that's happening that people are carrying from generation to generation. And if they're not prepared to break that or think, you know what, there is a better way of raising my children, there is a better way. This society, the days that we live in today are not the same as what our parents raised us in. We need a different set of skill set. We need to raise children differently to adapt to the times that we're in, to help them be successful and confident in today's day and age.
Well, I'm hearing us all complain about, the latest generation and they're the millennials and they're lazy and they're this and they're that. Well, maybe we should be looking at ourselves first, and those of us that raise that generation to go, well, perhaps we should be looking internally first before blaming them.
And I think it's also, parenting is a self-reflection journey. So children will show up in you characteristics and personality traits that you actually will just need to reflect and work on yourself, and that's the beauty of them. And if you actually recognize that, so recognizing that initially is the first step, and then understanding, okay, well, they might be categorized in this generation, but you know what? They might have a different skill set that we don't even see or we don't even pick up on. So it's really about learning who they are and what they need. And I think that way it's going to be a really successful partnership.
So if in 10 years someone says, Sylvia, you transformed early childhood behaviour communication, what one change will they be describing?
Probably the implementation of a communication and behaviour module in every training in Australia at the very least.
Nice, I like it. Your book, so you've authored a book as well?
Yeah, so I co-authored Dreams and Determination. So that was an anthology that was done, and it basically just tells my story about, how I started in my business and some lessons I learnt along the way and the global impact that we've had and where to next. So
yeah, well done. So where can people if people want to get a copy of that?
Yep, they can find it on Booktopia, Amazon, and the links will be on my website as well.
Yeah, and we'll put some links in the comments below on this as well once we finish up. Sylvia, amazing. Thank you. I think what you're doing is incredible. I've used the word noble a few times, and I guess it is because you said it earlier that kids are the future. Obviously, they're the next generation. They're the ones that are going to run the world next. So what world are we leaving and what legacy are we leaving? And I think you're leaving a pretty powerful one. So well done. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure.
Yeah, great fun. If you like the content, please remember to like, subscribe, and leave a comment too. Share it around. You just never know the impact that might have on somebody else. And we'll see you next time on the Australian Business Show.